Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag, brought to you by Red Raider Outfitter, the fans' favorite since 1975. I'm Jared Johnson, and while Texas Tech is on bye this week, they're not playing anyone. They've still been practicing. The coaches are out on the road recruiting, and Texas Tech gets back to the second half of their season on October 22nd against West Virginia. I believe that's a 2 p.m. Central Time kickoff, and the game's going to be televised either on FS1 or FS2. But despite Tech being on bye, not playing anybody this weekend, we still received several really good questions from inside the Red Raiders subscribers, so I'm going to jump into those right now. Seaballs20 says, in your opinion, through sixth game, is Coach Joey McGuire doing better than, on par, or worse than expected as far as on-the-field coaching and results? He says, we all know he's crushing it on the recruiting trail. Indeed he is, and the staff is. I had very high expectations for Coach McGuire coming into this season, so I would say it's been on par. In terms of that as a motivator, I mean, he's been great. You can tell the team is fully invested and bought in and playing hard. They've appeared prepared for every game. Now, there have been some instances where I felt like opposing coaching staffs down with really good teams. They played 5 ranked opponents there in the last 5 games. So it's been tough competition, good coaches, but some other teams have made some good adjustments, and Tech, has had mixed results in terms of their own adjustments and playing that chess match. But, and I think there's been some, if one thing that surprised me, it's been that Coach McGuire has been so aggressive. And I thought he was going to be aggressive. He's an aggressive dude. He coached at Cedar Hill aggressively. No fear in that guy. But all of a sudden, I feel very old school in terms of how I approach some of these situations, because the trend in football, and certainly the way Texas Tech is going about it, is be aggressive, especially on fourth down. Go for it in certain situations, even on your own side of the field. And so, some of those situations to me, I'm like, that's a punt the ball. But, on one hand, those decisions have put Tech in some tough situations, especially its defense. But on the other, Tech doesn't beat Texas without going 6 for 8 on fourth down. It doesn't happen. So, and that's the signature win on the season. So, I mean, it's hard to argue with those results. There's been some clock and time management issues in terms of, was this the right call or not, which can be debated. There hasn't been a smack to the head blunder, in my opinion. Joe Yeager, Mighty Joe, said, I had a big problem with that onside kick after the initial score by Texas Tech. And I get that. I'm not just saying that. I really get that argument. But on the other hand, it did send a signal to his team, hey, we're aggressive. We're going to go after them. We're not scared. So I like that too. I think most of these decisions can be debated, at least. And some of the situations, even that I'm not sure I agree with, I'm like, well, if they didn't do that, then they probably would have lost that game. So hard to argue with those results. I would say overall it's on par with what I was expecting coming into it. Not better, not worse, but about on par. But I had high expectations of Coach McGuire coming into the season. From Syntex says, the eye test indicates Tech's D is better than this year. But the stats say, Tech's about the same as last year. Has the defense actually improved? Yes, it has. But it is confusing with some of the stats, because, they would tell you, okay, basically the same results. But I even talked to Tyree Wilson earlier this week. That podcast is on Inside the Red Raiders, free listen. And he, I asked that exact same question. He said, yeah, it is. And I mean, you could tell it is. It's a good tackling team. They're physical. They've been put in some, I mentioned this in the previous question, some tough situations and held out, at least held field goals, or even kept the other team from scoring points, despite, when Tech either turned the ball over or shank punt, which we'll get to here in a minute, or turn over on downs. They've held up. They're good at passing or rushing the passer. So the big thing to me is that they're not producing turnovers. The whole take 3 motto just hasn't materialized, and it's confusing to me because, again, they're physical. They get after the quarterback. So you would think Tech would be creating more turnovers, and they just haven't yet. And I think that's what's really holding this defense back more than some of these stats, which can sometimes be misleading. Sometimes the stats are exactly right on. I think in this case, I mean, if you watch the games, which if you're watching this, you probably have, then Tech's defense is better in a number of areas. Cornerback, linebacker hadn't really lost a step. I mean, Krishan Merriweather and all those guys, Kosai Eldridge, they've been really good. And then up front, I think you could argue is the strength of the whole team. So with Tyree Wilson leading the charge with Jalen Hutchings and Tony Bradford and some of those other guys coming off the bench. So, overall, this defense is better. And if they could just produce some more turnovers, I think it would really show that even more. All right, speaking of the punt shanks, Easy Deezy Fours says, how does Austin McNamara go from one of the best punters in the nation to what the hell? Yeah, there has been a lot of what the hell moments, and I really don't have an answer for you. And I don't know if anybody else will either. I don't know if Austin would have a answer for you. He shanks more punts in half a season than he has the previous 2 seasons, and I don't really understand why. Maybe he just has the yips, which maybe it's just in his head, and so now that's what's happening. I don't know if they changed his form or something like that. I would hope they didn't, because he was one of the best punters in the Big 12, if not the country, coming into the season. But, sometimes you see him boom 150-something yards, and then you see a shank the next one. That's 30 yards. So it's been frustrating. Problems on special teams has hurt Texas Tech, especially against those good teams where the margin for error is so thin. So you'd like to see him get more consistent and be the punter we all know that Austin is. Teeny Pepper says, Barry Morton looked like the future, but Oklahoma State does have the worst pass defense in the Big 12. He said, is the Smith versus Morton analysis fair at this point, or do we need to see more? Yeah, I mean, on one hand, you're right in terms of Oklahoma State's pass defense, but on the other hand, it was there. It's a big stage. They have a good defensive front. And I think we saw a lot from Morton for him to get for us to see what he can do against West Virginia. But inevitably, the redshirt freshman is going to have some bad games, and everybody will be screaming for whoever, the next quarterback up. But no, I mean, it's not a lot of data, but I think it's enough, again, for Morton to get the next start. And after that, we'll just have to see. I do think he is the future of the program. There's a spark there. His arm talent, there's something to be said about him being a gamer when the lights come on. His ability to escape pressure and throw on the run. All those things add up to, I think, Barry Morton should get the nod if he's healthy against West Virginia. And then we'll go from there with fresh data, right? All the Smoke wants to know how Fardahl's injury is coming along. He says, is he rehabbing or still recovering from surgery? I don't really know. And I'm not sure. They've tried to keep this close in terms of surgery or what. But last thing I heard and was told is that he's month to month. And that the hope is that by the beginning of Big 12 play that he'll be, brought back into rotation and able to play. So we'll have to see. But from Fardahl's himself, he's month to month. So that's really not what you want to hear. You want to hear day to day, or at least week to week, month to month. I mean, he's going to be out for some time. He's going to miss the first part of the season. That's just the reality of his injury in terms of when his surgery is or was. And I imagine they normally try and get that done as soon as possible so that he can heal. But I don't know that for certain. And again, even if I did, I don't know if I could say that, because they want to keep some of that stuff confidential in some cases. Sometimes they don't care. But in this case, it seems like they do. All right, Eastland says, has Coy Aiken seen the field this year? Any chance he does? He's a true freshman from Stephenville, receiver, punt returner. No, he's had a couple of injuries that's set him back, and it's been disappointing because he did look really good in fall camp when available. And I do think he could help possibly as a punt returner, which Tech could use that. So and as a receiver, I mean, he's just one of those guys who looks a little bigger than what he's listed at, and he's coming off like that All-American season where he led the country in receiving yards and all that as a senior at Stephenville and state championship game. And if you watch that game or see the highlights, I mean, the guy dominated that game. He made so many plays all over the field in all 3 phases of the game. So it'd be nice to have him back. I think they still want to redshirt him at this point. And Coach McGuire said recently that he is back practicing, so they're hoping to play him. He can play in up to 4 games and still retain that red shirt. So I do expect to see him at some point. How early, I don't know yet, but it's good news that he's already practicing. Tech Freak wants to know if we have any pregame rituals. The radio show doesn't count. Well, I mean, it kind of is a pregame ritual for me. I understand what you're saying, but like Saturday is just a go day for me, like all day. I mean, it's game day Saturday, especially when it's at home. I do have the radio show before. It's 2 hours, long, and it's usually 3 hours before the game. Some of the time a lot of the time I have to find, some place for my safe that I won't be worried about that for my boy to go be with, hopefully family or, if not, friends or babysitter or something. So all that is part of it. Just making sure I have all my stuff. Like even I don't forget my credential. I just know I'm going to do that at some point. I haven't yet. It's my 10th season covering Tech, but I haven't forgotten my credential on game day yet. Probably just jinxed it. But all that stuff is kind of my ritual. I really try to get better about like self-care, making sure I eat, because if I don't, even eating at the press box and everything, it's just like, it has a cumulative effect where I'm spent by the end of the night. By the time I'm doing these videos, I'm like, a zombie, the post-game wrap. So my ritual really is making sure my boy's okay, making sure I have everything prepped and ready, and doing the radio show, making sure I have everything in my briefcase, my laptop ready to go, the game threads, my credentials, just all that stuff. I gotta make sure, because I'm not smart enough to just, it'll be all right. I gotta be on my game and concentrate to make sure I handle all my business on game day, because there's not a lot of them. There's usually 6. I think this year there's 7 home games, and they're big deals in our world. I know they're big days for y'all. So that my ritual is usually some kind of preparation and work. I know that's boring, but that's what I got to do to do the deal. Laxative Larry wants to know, and this is the final question in the mailbag. He says, do you have any sense for which QB the team prefers or has the best chemistry with the team? He says, is there any reason to start Shuck at this point? Yeah, I think the coaches, obviously they named Shuck the starter coming out of fall camp, and Coach Keeley said the competition wasn't even close. That Shuck was the guy from most of the competition. I think I don't know if you use air quotes too, like he was kind of like, Shuck's the guy. So, the coaches clearly wanted Shuck to be the starter. Now, and I see why. He's very talented, a lot of potential, and then in his intangibles, he brings a lot in terms of as a leader. I know a lot of the players respect him. And then Morton, he's younger, but in scrimmages he produces, so they know what they have. And then Donovan Smith's another great leader. He's the kind of guy who will make sure he wins the sprints, that post-practice sprint. So there's a reason why they say it's not just blowing smoke, that all 3 of those guys have potential and leadership qualities and all that. And there's a reason why Coach McGuire and Coach Kitley take up for Donovan Smith. He has a lot of admirable qualities off the field. So in terms of the team, I think what I heard through most of fall camp, and guys were trying not to tip their hands, and then just what I've heard since the season started is, people really respected and liked Shuck, the way he went about his business. He was the leader of the team, But, again, people like Donovan Smith, the way he carries himself, and then the talent of Baron Morton is undeniable. So I don't really know, and you're talking about a big group of guys, like 100 guys if you count all of them, like the walk-ons and everybody. That's a lot of groups. There could be, from year to year, or even in parts of the season, there could be different factions and groups, and they believe different things. And so I can't just say, most of the team want Shuck, or most of the team want Baron Morton. And then, I'm not in those meeting rooms with them. As much access as I get, as much as inside info as I get, I'm still not in those meeting rooms. So I think it'd be unfair for me to say other than what I've already said about how I believe the team feels about each quarterback. I think all 3 are highly respected. I think Shuck, kind of the veteran leader, Donovan Smith, the way he carries himself, and then he handles his business, and then Baron Morton, the young phenom, everybody respects his talent. So I really think, again, Morton is probably the guy expected, but we'll just have to see. The coaches may see it differently, and for different reasons. We'll have to see who they trot out there against West Virginia on October 22nd. But I don't expect them to tip their hand, and they shouldn't. Let West Virginia prepare for all 3 quarterbacks. But right now, Tech is off this week, regrouping for the second half of the season. We had great questions as usual from Inside the Red Raiders subscribers. So for now, thank you for watching, and until next time.